Okay, thank you, Jimmy. And greetings, everybody. Hopefully my screen share is working and you all can see it.
We can.
Okay, well, again, John Franklin here with the City of Mesa. We're about, I think just south of about 600,000 in population with 6 facilities mixed between water, wastewater, and energy. And so when they asked me to talk about this, I think I'll just go ahead and open it up. But running into the issue that I think a lot of people may have is we've been historizing data for seems like forever, and it's just data that can't get out. Siloed data is what we've called it, but how to get it out there for people to get the data, and we get more and more requests as time goes on, and the valley here is growing so fast that you're trying to get more integrators in there or engineering firms in there to help you to model your water system, your wastewater system, to keep things rolling. And they're constantly asking for more data. So there was issues like that, issues between even our environmental requirements to even operations and internal engineering that are outside of the SCADA system, but they all still want that data. And so that's kind of where we started out. And it just kind of helps all the way around. And so one of the things I started playing with was, and it literally was just kind of playing around, testing it. And we used the MQTT, and I had some coworkers in the IT department that were the DBAs that were really working with Azure and with Databricks. And so when we got together, I thought, well, let's see if we can actually, kick this off, because I really don't know of anybody that was doing it. And it's this is a typical architecture, I think. But in our case, we don't have fix in this. I think there's another slide here. Yeah, this is probably more of the basic layout of our system in a very generalized form. But that's it. That's how simple it really looks. I wish it were that simple to execute, but it got there. And our challenges really were working with our security team, making sure that we closed any holes, that we were meeting all of their requirements. And in a biggie is having the IT department that's willing to work with you and work side by side and actually have buy-in. Because there is a lot of work. I'm going to admit right off the bat, I know very little about Azure and Databricks. What I've learned is just by doing this project, and that team on that side helped me immensely as far as getting the JSON string, all of that stuff together properly, getting the security and certificates and everything together to work well. And so that's one challenge, is that you're going to have to work really well with your IT team. And I know the old OT-IT battlegrounds are kind of a thing in the past. There's still some definite lines between the two, but it's merging more and more. There was also, just from the security side, making sure that the right people could see the data, and only the right people. Which you have that same security, not just within the historian, but you also have that within Azure as well. And again, that the outcomes and benefits are kind of, for us anyway, is it did give a centralized location for the data, so that now we could have outside entities basically get permission to read that data to do their own number crunching, or we could even do our KPIs for whether you're using Power BI, Grafana, whatever outside tool you want to use, and now that data is available. And that made it pretty nice for the people over in our engineering staff. And also city manager, our department heads, they love charts. So this is a neat way to get that chart data out there to them. Just to give you a quick example here, this is the dashboard for in Databricks itself. And just to kind of give you an idea of the throughput that we got through it, and I thought this was kind of interesting, is as you can look, as we're, you got over 300,000 values, and in your timestamp, within that just 1 day's time. We're doing right now about 1,000 tags as it is, because we're still, kicking this off the ground. But the throughput was pretty nice. I was fairly impressed. You can look at our latency over the data retrieval, and in 15 seconds, that's not too bad. I was pretty pleased. We are doing fairly slow data, but as far as it's bringing it over, you can see that the 300K in the 15-second time range and working in Databricks is pretty simple. You've got AI in your back pocket, so as soon as I do a query, AI will pop up and tell me what to do to fix it. Wished I had that about 10 years ago. And but I just kind of wanted to show just different ways that the IT department came in, and they said, okay, well, let's see if this is, if this is going to be really a value add. And when they saw the performance of it, they thought, yeah, this is something that can really work. And we've had it up for about, I would say a little over 6 months. And we've been pretty pleased with it. And we are running Historian 2024 and then the Azure IoT collector, which is kind of like server-to-server collector. I don't know, whatever name you want to call it, but that's the collector we're running.
Yeah, John, actually, one of the things I was going to ask is I know you and I discussed before just around kind of that architecture. I don't know if you can go back to it, but like you mentioned, you had, I believe you had Historian both at, there. So you had Historian kind of at the IT layer as well as the DMZ and in the cloud, like you mentioned. I mean, are there some advantages to the architecture? Like, obviously, historians on site, but also
Correct.
in the cloud. But I assume there's some advantages to having that architecture as well. Right?
The reason we chose this type of architecture is every plant, every facility wanted it to be able to stand on its own. And so they can, each facility is firewalled and DMZ'd on its own. And so if we lose connectivity between facilities, it's just an inconvenience. It's not an outage. Right. And so the historians that are on site are production historians, for lack of another term. They're there for the operator process. Then we are doing server-to-server collectors to the centralized historian in the DMZ. So and we do that for people to be able to get their fingers in and hit it. Well, that was working okay, but when you get on the other side of the DMZ into the enterprise, that you have a lot of end users that are having to hit that historian, which poses more security risks, and it's so, it's just more exposure. And so, that was the other reason, is how do we reduce that exposure? And so by moving that data up here into the Azure, into the cloud, now we don't need to poke any more holes into the DMZ than we have to. And so that was kind of the idea behind it. Before, we had people that's, really the only thing that you get for historian for data retrieval is the Excel add-in. And so I would end up with a dozen engineers trying to use the Excel add-in to dig into the DMZ to pull data. And, it's good for what it is, but the Excel add-in is just that. It's what it is. Not a lot to it. And it has its own hiccups. So we needed something that was a little more robust, a method to actually get to that data. So that was the reason, the architecture we chose. Now, there's probably better architectures out there, but this is the path that we had picked several years back when we were just trying to protect our system. And as cybersecurity becomes more and more, what do you want to say? It's an ever evolving process. So. Did that kind of answer it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think another question is, you mentioned about working with IT. Were there any a specific approach you took to that? Obviously, they're in the industry of keeping people out, and obviously you're trying to make the data available. But how
Yeah.
did you take that? What approach did you take with that?
Well, that's really kind of funny because you think I've been in this business for 30 years, and for the first 15 of it, I was trying to get data out to people, and the last 15 of it's been trying to keep people out of the data. And it's really hilarious how time just goes full circle. Mainly, don't be adversarial with your IT department. Work with them.
Right.
Most of the time, you find, at least in the bigger cities, I think would probably be more common. They're busy, so they don't really want your SCADA system. And that's what we have here anyway. They're real busy. So if you can be self-sustaining, they're all happy, and they'll do anything to keep you that way. And in the same token, you have a big knowledge base there, and so you kind of chum them with. They're getting hit with other needs, so their choice to get this data was to use linked servers between the historian and SQL. And that has its own challenges. And so when the DBAs had a choice of doing the link server method or being able to get it into Azure, they were like, okay, we've been doing the link server for 10 years. What else do we have? Because technology's taking us another route. And so their buy-in was kind of automatic on that end of it once they saw that there was options to just doing it that way. And I'd kind of forgotten about that, but that was our database group's motivator. And then it was just a matter of getting the security team and everything to see, what ports had to be opened and how many ports could be closed, and, what outside exposure are we reducing, things like that.
Right.
And I've got a question here that's the process of choosing the right historian.
Yeah.
Well, what was important for us is not losing data, having a historian that could always feed forward type thing. When with the collectors, we started out with Proficy Historian when it was in its infancy, and it had a lot of growing pains, but back in its infancy it did, but it matured to be quite the product to me. When we first looked at it, it had a lot to do with price points too. It's the best competitor it had out there, or its competitor was extremely expensive in the price points. And before I got into water and wastewater, I was in energy, and we did power generation. And so the big king of historians in that market was just extremely expensive. And again, they didn't provide any tools really per se, other than the equivalent of Proficy Historian, and that's a kind of an Excel add-in. But what was important is to be able to, if the historian's down, am I losing data, or is it still storing data so that when I get the historian up, it'll keep it? That was a biggie for us. When you upgrade historian, how much heartburn is it to migrate, or to do an upgrade, or to move to a new box? There is a lot of virtualization out there. At Mesa, our SCADA group, we kind of minimize our virtualization. But data storage, how does it do it? What's the, what's going to be the challenges in migration? So those are a couple of the biggies that helped us choose.
Yeah, I guess like you mentioned the part with the historian on for the SCADA, and then the one in the cloud, so to speak. I think that's sort of like the store and forward, I think, is what you're using there, right? So that if you lost connection, it'd still collect, and kind of a form of redundancy.
Correct. But and then just the collectors themselves, the collectors will store. And so even if the historian at the plant is down, the collector's still doing its job. Right. And so when it comes back online, it'll have to backfill. I was going to I know we have some of the development team on here, so I was going to ding them with this little screenshot here. When you get your Azure cloud up, and now you've got your connection, your Databricks, and now you need to backfill it, got to get some data in there. It's going to start as of today, but these guys want data from last year. So I had to do some deep diving into the knowledge base to find this little tidbit. And basically, you may have to create a second server-to-server collector so that you don't get a conflict with your Azure to IoT cloud collector that's doing the real-time data. And you'll have to run this, and it's just going to look at the tag list as a text file. And you have to pick the dates, and it's basically, what is that, epic time? So you have to convert your time range of when you want to pull the data from to epic time and put it in there and then run this command line. And it just would seem to me that if we're building a collector to do this, and it's going to be a known that you're going to have to backfill it with data, that this would have been a really neat little GUI. Hint, hint.
Okay, I think I'll call that a VOC.
Because without it, the only data you're going to have is what you start collecting from that very moment. And so, and it works. It just runs, and you just let that command line box stay open until it's done. And it can take, for me, it ran for a day, and it backfilled the data that I needed. But if we add new tags into Azure, you're going to have to run this again. So
right.
that was just my little ding.
Okay.
Hey, John, I think we just had a hand raise. If we can get to him real quick. It just went down. Sir, if you just had your hand up, if you could come off mute real quick, we'd love to hear your question.
Yeah, it was me. My name is Stamatios Sobariotis. I'm from the city of Laval up in Canada. Actually, I think you did answer my question, but your Proficy Historians on the data acquisition on the lower part of your screen, is that an essential, or is it a complete?
I think actually, Jimmy, I think you and I even discussed this, that you could probably, if you felt that you could probably do the collection directly from the DMZ. But we've got it pretty tight and pretty closed, and we wanted the historian that's at the bottom of the screen to be purely for operations. And so
that's what we have as well. So we have an essential there and a full license up top in the DMZ.
Yeah, I think, John, I think what he's asking, there's
license.
Historian Essentials is sort of that,
yes.
The light version that we include with SCADA,
Exactly.
versus a standard historian, which I'm not sure which one you've got there. But
so we've got standard historians on the site. So in each site, I mean, they're not massive amounts. So I think probably 10,000 tags each in that range. And so a lot of that data stays there that goes to the historian there and doesn't go up into the DMZ just because it's
we
data.
use it as mainly to populate our SCADA. So that's why we're using the actual intent of it, which is the essential, to have a couple of tags there to build our graphs on the SCADA. And any important tag is brought up to the DMZ.
Right.
I had a secondary question, which is, how did you find the server-to-server reliability? Because we've experienced issues with the S2S that it wasn't on 100%, and we needed it 100%, which is basically that was our main issue. We had a lot of issues making it work. I think it's still problematic to this day.
That's interesting, because we haven't really had any issues with the S2S. Each one of these, the only 2024 server in this group is the one in the DMZ. All the rest of these are, I think, I know I have a 7.1 and a couple of 8s. And a 2023. So, as we try to upgrade and cycle replace hardware, we kind of hold off, but they've all been backwards compatible. We haven't had any issues So it's interesting that that you are, but and we've had this
Because
model
what we
had
had
a long
as an
time.
issue was we wanted we wanted to separate our that's it. You wanted to use the server to server to have an acquisition server and a reporting server.
Mm-hmm.
And for a massive report to be requested, not to affect our acquisition server in
Correct.
DMZ, and the server to server function never came through. So yeah,
It's
but
too
maybe
bad.
that was not under version 2024. Maybe it was I have to verify, validate, but I think it was a 23.
Yeah, that's too bad. Yeah, well, that's something that we
Yeah.
haven't experienced.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and what you might want to do on that is, maybe if you've got a specific issue, maybe create a case if you haven't done that already, and see if our support team can help you troubleshoot that.
Yeah, that's been done. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? One thing I did want to ask you, while I asked to see if there's other questions from the audience. John, one of the things you'd mentioned is also you had part of the reason for getting into the cloud was also to enable external access. You've got some contractors you're working with, and I'm just curious if there's any specific security challenges there, or if it worked out okay overall.
Yeah, I should say there always is. When
Yeah.
when COVID hit, that really changed everything. But we also learned a lot. We were doing startups on a 30 MGD wastewater plant, and right in the middle of COVID, it hit, and we were trying to do startup. Well, that just really threw a wrench in our integrator, our design engineering firm, and so we already started learning how do we give remote access? What kind of remote access can we get? And so after those learning exercises, it actually was really helpful for us as we move forward. But what we had learned is that through our security process, if it's an outside engineering firm that needs to get data, security screening and follow the security team's steps and processes to get that, which would then allow them to come into Databricks, or they would get their authentication to where they could log into Databricks from their location and actually data mine out of our cloud instance. And another one was where we have multiple cities where we do joint ventures. So you may have two cities that share resources or share plants, or they both discharge into the same facility, and so they need to look at performance data from both sides. Yeah, we live in the desert, so water is gold.
Yeah.
That is liquid gold. So everybody wants their water credits. Everybody wants their water, they want their fair share. And so one way of doing it was, in one instance, is we used Grafana as the hook. And so they did their data dashboard with Grafana. Another one did Power BI or reporting solutions. I don't know, there's so many of them out there. But it was another way where they could actually get into Azure, hook that, and then they had their own dashboard at their city that they could maintain. So it broke that umbilical cord, for lack of another term, of having to come back to us to get the data. Did that answer your question?
No, I think
those are two methods that we use.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, and I guess one last one I had, John, was obviously running things in the cloud is different than probably maintaining things on-prem. Were there any kind of benefits around, I don't know if it's from an IT management or you managing systems or operating systems? Is there anything that you gained from running it in the cloud versus having yet another historian kind of on-prem, as an example? Yeah.
Well, it took the maintenance away from us, which is, being selfish. That's what I wanted. And I'm not, like I say, I may be speaking out of turn here with Azure and how it works, but I think even when you're paying for it, there's a cost savings by doing cloud-based, because I notice that when I go in and I do queries in the cloud, it has to, for lack of another term, start up the engine, or basically your meter's running. And then when you're not using it, the meter's not running. So, and basically there's a cost savings there that, depending on how heavily it's used is how expensive it is. And again, that's probably more than, I don't understand half of what I do know about it, but the IT department seemed to be very, very excited about that part of it. It's just a cost savings for them, and just hardware management. So, it takes a whole bunch of VMs and a whole bunch of SQL servers that I'm sure they have way more than I can imagine now out, and gives them other options. So the benefits really there was on their end of their just ease of access for them and maintenance costs on their end. So, and I think that was made the big motivator on their side, I think. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thanks for watching. If you found this video insightful, click here to watch the next video and learn how GE Vernova is at the forefront of tackling challenges in the water and wastewater industry.